Morning, everybody. We're getting ready to start. We just have a quick 30 minutes this morning, so we're going to start right on time. The first thing I want to say is just thank you from all of us here at Alia for making the time and space to check in on our next steps of what we're up to. We had our last webinar exactly 3 months ago today, on August 15th. And so we have done a lot, and a lot has happened, and wanted to just check in on where we were now. So the next thing I want to do is just kind of put up our favorite slide that is about a Buckminster Fuller quote that is one of my favorites. That talks about you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And this is kind of our rally call here at Alia. So wanted to just share that with you this morning. The first thing we wanted to do was walk you through this idea of an UnSystem. And really, this is the result of the 100 innovators we had from around the country who came together for 3.5 days in Minneapolis at the 10 of 10 for kids, and then the subsequent 450 evaluations that we reviewed, and the additional, I'm sorry, just 1 second, we're gonna mute a few background noise here. The additional 50 meetings that we conducted in order to get an idea of what the through line was of what we heard and saw and read. And what happened was that what began to emerge was, although we had 30 prototypes that had a piece and a part of the system, the evaluations said that they were interested in us kind of 10xing what was done and pushing it further. And as we saw the themes that came throughout, what emerged was that we had a really hard time building the perfect child welfare system because it already exists, and it's called the family. And the struggle is that when families experience challenge, as they will inevitably do, our response now is to come in with additional requirements and sometimes blame or shame, and to disconnect the family rather than to come in to support the family back to being able to safely care for their children. I'm going to invoke Jerry Milner's name here, who is the current director of the Children's Bureau, who says that foster care should rarely be used, and if used, be used in support of the family and the parents, not as a way to provide treatment to a child. And so this is really this idea of the best child welfare system for a child is the natural family system, and that what every child needs and wants more than anything else in the world is for their parents to be okay. From this, we also developed with this group of innovators a list of guiding principles for an UnSystem. So this is the North Star. It might look many different ways in many different systems, but how do we know if we're really on the track to building a new way of working? And so these were the guiding principles that were developed, started at the 10 of 10 and finished by 10 of 10ers in an additional webinar and through many additional listening sessions and meetings that included people from around the country. And the guiding principles for an UnSystem, and you notice it doesn't say the UnSystem because we think there is more than one way to do this. And so it's not a model, it's really a framework that says how do we know if we're on the right track. And that is to protect relational connections as sacred, to really regard trusting relationships and secure attachment as the foundation of lifelong well-being for youth. The next is to trust the wisdom of children and families to design their own futures. So we're really interested in children and families being architects of their own destiny with support in cases where it's needed. And to commit to intergenerational well-being. We're often working with families who are 3 and 4 generations deep. And so this idea is that you can't just remove a child and, you know, quote unquote, provide treatment to a child, that you've really got to look at the family system of healing. Because We're getting a strange echo all of a sudden. Make sure everybody's muted. There we go. So the idea is that we really have to look at the entire family. So the idea is that really look at the entire family. I'm sorry about that. We're going to wait just 1 second. Okay, I think we may have remedied that. And so really looking at the idea of intergenerational well-being, the whole family needs to be addressed, not just the child. The other piece is to insist on racial equity and radical inclusion. Really what came forward quite prominently at the 10 of 10 was the challenges we face in structural oppression in many different ways, and so addressing that head on. And then another one is to dare to share power with our partners, with each other, with the families and children we serve, that it's more important that the work be done than a specific group or individual driving it or getting credit for it. That what's really important is the work that needs to be done. And the last piece is nurturing the capacity for joy, which is the idea that this work should not destroy the families and the relationships of the people doing the work. And a way that we know children are safe emotionally and physically is because they are able to experience joy as part of their childhood, which every child has a right to. And then when in doubt, we say, do what love would do, which means that if none of these apply or you're not sure what to do, to be really clear that if you're having struggles making a decision, you should do what you would do for a baby that you loved. And so this is part of the work that we did in the 10 of 10, where 100 innovators came, and in the subsequent UnSummit, which was done with 25 change leaders from 11 states in October, and looked at the levers of change around purpose and power and culture and accountability, and in addition, the incentives that are in the system. And so really taking a look at how do we create this change based on the ideas that we formulated. And so from that, now we have people from over 3/4 of the states and well over 100 innovators who have this body of knowledge sitting here ready to go for change. And what we initially planned to do was to spend a year in planning with really experienced systems leaders who could help us to develop a way forward for people who wanted to do this kind of change. Instead, what we heard from systems leaders was they're tired of pilots. They don't want a demonstration project. In fact, one system leader said to us, Amelia, you know, we have more pilots than Delta. We are not interested in trying something new. We're interested in putting a stake in the ground and doing something. And so we've really adjusted our strategy to reflect what we're hearing from systems leaders, which says that we are going to take a leap sooner rather than later in applying some of these principles and practices, and more importantly, in creating the space where there are the resources, the people, and the tools necessary for system leaders to craft their next step towards an UnSystem. So this gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We are launching a cohort of systems leaders. And so the blue folks with their arms up in the air on this diagram are the systems leaders, and the other one is a systems second. So in the event of a catastrophic event happening in someone's life, there would be someone to continue the work and to share the journey with. So we have a system leader and a second, and then each system leader and second gets a lived experience guide, someone who has personal and profound experience in the system, either having lost children or to the system, or who have grown up in the system, and a professional guide, which is someone with incredible experience in the system, who's a known innovator, who's known to push the boundaries, to think bigger. So that little unit of a system leader a system second, and a lived experience guide and a professional guide becomes the core team of that system. And you'll notice there are 6 of them. So we're releasing an RFI on December 1st, which is a request for innovators who are systems leaders who are interested in learning about this and applying these kinds of concepts as they will develop together in a cohort. You'll see also that we have implementation coaches and folks to help them with the strategy and plan for implementation. There's also an evaluator who will document and evaluate the process. And we have community cultivators who are people who will help the local community to be engaged, to bring their ideas forward. They may meet with the legislative body or the schools or the Justice Department and judges or sheriff. They may provide a media kit to the leader. They might write an op-ed in the local community newspaper to help ready the soil for change, because what we know is that when you kind of move people's cheese, if you're doing it significantly enough, people will fight back and go to the safe place, which is the status quo. And so we hope to provide some guides and assistance to the systems leaders who are willing to kind of take this step out into the boundaries. So that RFI, which will be an application for systems to apply to do this, will be released on December 1st, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit. But really what our ask of it to you is to share this as wide and far as you can to people who you know to be innovative leaders, people who you know are willing to take a bold step into the next set of their work to go from doing things the way that is not producing the desired results to do a very family-driven kind of work that is not professionally driven. As part of the 10 of 10, what a lot of people came to, some of the designers talked about, we have a $30 billion child welfare system that involves over 670,000 children a year coming into care. And that number, as many of you know, has been on the rise year over year for the past several. And so the idea here is that, we really are looking to put the family at the center of driving this work rather than professionals, to really build instead of look at how do we fix the broken system. Rather, we know what kids and families need to thrive. How do we build that? And so it's really a generative, creative, strengths-based, family-driven approach to the work. And we are looking for, as we scale down an old way of work, building a new way of work that's based on our current evidence, our current knowledge in the field, which is different than the set of assumptions upon which the existing system was built. And so how do we begin to build that and transition our work into a new way? And so these are the people who would be involved in the cohort. And what we're really looking at is this set of activities that started in May with the 10 of 10 convening with IDEO. We've worked with the Toro Company to further clarify those concepts. We held the UnSummit with 25 change leaders from 11 states. The University of St. Thomas helped us in a design session to clarify further. And now we are building the RFI and the criteria for the professional guides and the lived experience guides. And we will be releasing that call, and that'll be open in December and in January. We plan to do selections in February, and we hope to have the first initial cohort meeting in Minneapolis in March. This will involve an in-person meeting of this entire cohort every month for 10 months straight in Minneapolis to design and build the next steps of implementation, the vision, the strategy, and the implementation plan to be implemented in 2019. In 2020, we'll measure and adjust that and bring on a beta cohort, a secondary cohort, who the primary, the alpha cohort, will help to mentor and build off of the lessons learned. And then we're hoping to continue that from 2021 on and bring in systems as we learn more about the new way. Let me just say that it's a big leap of faith, and we don't have all the answers. The strategy is emergent, but what we know is we know enough to get started, and that continuing to do what we've always done, expecting different results, is not going to get us where we need to go. As one system leader said to me recently, you know, Amelia, we've changed everything we can. We're as trauma-informed as an agency can get. We've stabilized our workforce. We work in a way that promotes a culture of well-being. We've done everything we know how to do. We've applied all of the best thinking, and it still stinks, right? It's still not good enough for our kids. And we need to do something different if we expect different results. And so this is where we're headed, and hoping that other people are brave enough to join us. So just to be clear, we're not looking at piloting, we're not looking at demonstration projects, we're really looking at whole system intervention. There's a bias towards action, there's an expectation that we will fail, adjust, and learn. There is an experience of doing the next thing that we all develop together to be our next right step, and coming together to learn from and support one another in all the ways that that we hope will help to really bring this to fruition. So that is really a big thing that we wanted to talk about and announce today. You'll hear this more, you'll see it on our listserv if you're signed up for newsletters. You'll see on our website the announcement on the 1st of December. We are also on the 1st of December going to do a Facebook Live event at 10:30 Central Time, where we will take questions and interact with the audience of people who want to know more about this. We will post a FAQ on this. I am happy, as is any member of Team Alia, to talk more with you about this. And we're really asking you to cast a wide net to people who you know who may be in support of this kind of thinking and effort, who might want to do this in their own jurisdictions, or who might want to support it in other ways. We're still looking for funders for the project and are interested in bringing anyone into to this kind of thinking possible. So if you're familiar with Rogers' innovation curve, right, it talks about there's only 2.5% of the population that are true innovators that are at the front end. And then the next are early adopters, which are 13.5% of the population. So that 16% of the population, that 16% of systems leaders, that 16% of funders, that 16% of caring community members and professionals, those are our people. Right? We're really looking for the people who want to be the first to buy the new Apple Watch, who want to be the first to adapt to new things because they feel like the consequence of continuing on in the old way is so significant that the fear of trying something new is really outweighed by the desire to create some critical change that they see needed. So those are our people, and if you know them, we want you to share this with them. The other thing we wanted to talk about briefly today was to talk about the release of the Wapaka story. We've had the great pleasure and privilege of working with Chuck Price and Shannon Kelly at Wapaka County, Wisconsin. They were featured on one of our first webinars, but we spent some time with them over the past few years and have really watched them develop their strategy and their work in a way that is really leading in a lot of ways. And we had the good fortune of working with Casey Family Programs in a couple-year project with them, where we helped them to do some systems transformation work too. The story of this example of a jurisdiction really changing their mindset to do things very differently, to get dramatically different outcomes for their staff and for kids and families, is detailed in the Wapaka story. And so we have learned so much from our partners there about practical and consequential ways of implementing a new way of doing and thinking, that we wanted to really document that and offer pieces of information as well as resources to people who wanted to do something similar in their organizations. This is really hot off the presses. It's just a couple of days away from release at best. And so we are getting ready to announce this. You'll see this. We'll send it out to our whole listserv, and it'll be available on our website too. But I just wanted to invite Chuck and Shannon, if you have anything, or Christine, I see maybe Christine's on too from Casey. If anybody wanted to say a word or two about the Wapaka story, we'd be really happy to have you to say a couple things here.
Well, Hi, Amelia. This is Chuck.
Okay.
So first, I'll just say thank you to both you and staff at Alia and at ANU, and then Christine, I know you're on, and thanks to Christine Norbit and Casey Family Programs for their support of the work that we've been doing here in Waupaca. A little bit surreal to see some of it in writing, and really kind of interesting for us too to kind of look back on where we've come over the last 4 or 5 years in our transformation, and hoping that kind of being able to share our story can help some other folks along their journey as well. And so having a little bit of lessons learned and some of the things that we've been able to experience here, hopefully helping others as they look to transform their agencies and practice. And so seeing it in print is definitely very humbling for one, but really has been great for us to kind of look back at the progress that we've made. We're not done yet, but I think this is really kind of the beginning, and it's the start of the story.
Thanks, Chuck. I didn't really warn you, Christine. I'm not positive you're on, but I'll just wait 1 second in case you have anything.
Oh, yeah, hi, thank you. Really, I just want to say what a pleasure it was to be involved with the project, and really excited work. And I think that they give a lot of details in counties, states, a lot of information. So I'm just grateful for being able to participate in this.
Thanks for your support, Christine. It takes really people to invest in innovation and trying things a new way to make it work. And so when you come across folks who really are willing to do that, it's just, we have so much gratitude for your support in this way. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the Healing Guidebook that we are writing with ANU Family Services. This will be released at the end of the year. This is the draft copy, but will be released at the end of the year, which is things to do instead of talk therapy with kids who are suffering with the consequences of having experienced childhood trauma. And so it's about an 80-page booklet that will be available by the end of the year. So stay tuned for that. The other thing is that we are releasing with, in cooperation with the University of Minnesota School of Social Work, the Trauma Effective Leadership Certificate. Dr. Debbie Gravenik and I will be doing this certificate delivered through the U of M once a month for 10 months. And it's about building trauma-informed leaders in a resilient organization. It talks about change management as well as a trauma-informed approach, as well as promoting well-being in an organization and in leaders. And so we will have, that registration is not open yet. There are only 25 seats available. And if you are signed up on our newsletter, that will come out and be available for registration soon. It's going to launch officially in March, and I think there's a pre-session in February, pre-work in February. So just to get that on your radar as well. I talked about the RFI release date of December 1st, and if you can mark your calendar for 10:30 a.m. Central for the Facebook Live event, that's also something that we would love for you to do. And then we are hoping that you're interested in staying involved, getting involved, and we wanted to share some ways for you to do that. You know, one of my favorite cartoons right now is the one that was popular during the election cycle, which says, who wants change? And everybody raises their hand. And then it says, well, who wants to change? And nobody raises their hand. And then a further one I've seen is, and who wants to lead change? And everybody's sitting on their hands. So we know that this is a group that you all are people who not only want to change, but want to be part of the change. And we want to just invite you to participate in all the ways that you can. So reading and sharing the Waupaca story is a way to do that. Registering for the Trauma-Informed Leadership Certificate with the University of Minnesota is a way. Nominating as a system, nominating a system leader to the innovation cohort, or applying for it, or applying as a professional guide or a lived experience guide for the cohort is another way to get involved. Sharing the RFI, retweeting us and sharing on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and others, and helping us to spread that word gets it into all the right hands. And so having conversations with or giving nudges to people who you think might be great for that cohort. And of course, if you're signed up for our newsletter, you'll get all the fastest, hottest information on those pieces. And so we really just want to thank you for your time today with us. We have a few minutes left, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. I think we have about 5 minutes, and so I will make myself available for that. If you could just unmute yourself one at a time, or type your questions in is even better. We would be happy to do that. And otherwise, I just want to thank you again for your participation and for joining us today. Is there anybody who has any questions? Is there a question online? I guess one other quick thing to say is we will do these kinds of reports, these quick reports periodically. I think our next one is scheduled for January 15th. And more information will be coming forward on that. Mary, where's the WPACA story? The WPACA story will be available on our website, and we will send out a link to anyone who's on our newsletter. Is the certificate available online? Yes, Ashley, it looks like. That is available online. It's only online, and so it'll be I think it might be the 3rd Friday of the month for a couple of hours online each month, and then there's a lot of asynchronistic work to do as well. Thanks, Laura. We're so glad that you enjoyed it, and nice to see you too, Patty. There's a link being put up to the Trauma-Informed Leadership Certificate there, a link for the class. I don't think registration is open just yet, and when that opens, we'll send that out. Anybody else? Any other questions? We did record this, and so it will be available for anybody who missed it to watch again. We'll have that posted and ready. And seeing no other questions, I'll say thank you and goodbye. Good to have this time with all of you.